There's neurotic me.
But there's no microphone if we stand there. So.
There's a microphone here. Guys, are the handhelds coming? Right, this microphone is working. How good is that? I don't need a scream. Could we get a handheld over here to test with John? Cool.
I'll probably just do what everybody else does. I don't know if they're planning to stand here or stand in the middle. But
I don't know if anybody's got a game plan for this, but you know,
I
some
don't-
people
so-
like to wander around.
yeah,
we have other
I'll
people.
probably be fairly rooted to the sport, but I can use a mic. You know, it doesn't matter.
Whatever makes you happy.
So the clicker.
This is the clicker.
Okay.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
Back. Don't you touch
Even
it.
I couldn't get confused with that.
Next.
It's just what you pointed at.
It's easy as. This one, yeah, it's probably good
Two.
for everybody.
So, yeah.
So you have the order.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeanette will call you on stage. You know when to get on and off. Sorry to put it like that.
I think so.
Yeah, I'll be sitting there probably on the stairs or on the corner seat there. And if needs be, I'll put up some antics to get you on and off. That's a basic plan. But Astrid will manage you guys. And microphones here, clickers here.
And I point the clicker. I have to point the clicker at a particular.
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Anywhere at all. That's easy when it doesn't move. So we have two backups. It's me and Simon.
I think I'm bring all the slides. Hi, fine. John, nice to meet you. Well, it's just that I'll probably be standing there when I do my little bit later. So.
We can get your mic up there. Sue? Yeah. Hey.
Hello, everybody got a seat? Dear audience, I'm Jeannette Fry, Director of Bibliothèque Cantonale et Universitaire Lausanne and President of LIBER. First, I have to apologize, Madam Minister of Culture and Gaeltacht, Josepha Madigan, who had liked to come to the opening of our conference, but can't be with us just at the moment because she had a last-minute change in her agenda and has to do it at the Parliament just now. Dear Mr. Dejan Maslikovic, Deputy Minister of Culture of the Republic of Serbia, dear Professor Linda Doyle, Dean of Research of Trinity College, dear Helen Shenton, Librarian and College Archivist of Trinity College Dublin, dear Cathal Macaulay, where's Cathal? Yeah. Chair of Consortium of National and University Libraries, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, friends, welcome to LIBER's 48th annual conference here at the home of one of Europe's most renowned libraries, Trinity College in Dublin. First, I'd like to thank Helen Shenton, librarian and college archivist of Trinity College, for hosting us this year. It's a huge workload to organize the LIBER conference. Thank you, you and your team, for this hard work. It's such a pleasure to be here as we are walking on more than 400 years of library history. I think it is an ideal setting for our conference, which this year addresses the essential role research libraries have to play as society moves deeper into the fourth industrial revolution and a new world of open knowledge. The information and data we keep bears the potential to find answers to the great challenges of our times, such as climate change, depleting natural resources, or globalization. As the rapid growth of technology and data continues, the library remains. We are the institutions which can take care of knowledge. Therefore, making it available and usable and ensuring that the results of the research and education are shared with society at large is one of the key issues we will address during this year's conference, dedicated to the theme Research Libraries for Society. So thanks again, especially our local host and their staff, to make this conference possible. I wish you all inspiring moments and declare this conference open. Now it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Helen Shenton, librarian and college archivist of Trinity College Dublin, and Cathal Macaulay, chair of the Consortium of National and University Libraries. Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam President. And a very, very, very warm welcome to everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome LIBER delegates to the beautiful and historic Trinity College Dublin. As one delegate said to me earlier, as she walked through the gates, the main gate, she said, "Now this is what I call a campus." Trinity is hosting the conference in partnership with CONL, the All-Ireland Organisation of National and University Libraries, and we're especially proud to welcome this 48th annual LIBER conference to Ireland for the very first time in its history. There are nearly 500 delegates from 37 countries, including Sudan, Australia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, China, Lithuania, Canada, the States, and an especially warm welcome to the 74 delegates from Ireland. And you will have noticed outside that we've arranged specially for you our local ploughing championships in the square outside. So, as the President said, the Minister for Culture has been called to answer questions in the Dáil, which is the lower house of Parliament. I saw her earlier, she apologises, and she sends us these thoughts. Dublin is a UNESCO City of Literature and a veritable city of libraries, a centrepiece of which is Trinity's beautiful Long Room. As an Enlightenment library, exploring new frontiers of knowledge in the 18th century, it's an appropriate location for today's conference, which is focusing on research libraries for society. So just to situate you where you are in the campus, so you're in the heart of the city. The Dáil and the political district, including the Lord Mayor's Mansion House, where we're having dinner later tonight, is 5 minutes away. Over to your left is the Cultural Quarter, the National Gallery, the National Museum, the National Library, 5 minutes away. Over to your right is the retail area of Grafton Street, 5 minutes away. Over that way, down past the innovative Science Gallery, which I would highly recommend you visit, its strapline is where art and science collides, is Grand Canal Quays, 10 minutes away. Sometimes called Silicon Docks, it's where Google and LinkedIn started in amongst waterfront apartments, and there's a Daniel Libeskind Theatre. And it's where Trinity is planning a new second campus as the core of an innovation district of startups, SMEs, established companies like Google, along the lines of the innovation districts in Rotterdam, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in the here east, which is the Olympic site in London, where University College London is at the heart of it, and its robotics research. And then winding up from the old library, past Dublin Castle and St. Patrick's Cathedral to Guinness, is the Dubline, the axis for visitors between the Book of Kells and Guinness Storehouse, the two most visited destinations in Dublin. It takes in the exquisite Marsh's Library and the unique Chester Beatty Library on the way. So as the Minister says, Dublin is a city of libraries and a city of literature. As well as Chester Beatty and the Marshes, there's the Worth Library. There's the Royal College of Surgeons Cutting Edge Library, where the Liber Emerging Leaders held their programme took place. There's the Royal Irish Academy. And Dublin is a UNESCO city of literature, home to Jonathan Swift, Yeats, James Joyce. And there are literary exhibitions across the city, such as the National Libraries on Seamus Heaney and Yeats. And delegates, you have the opportunity to visit these on Friday. And then, of course, there's Trinity and the sublime Book of Kells and the Long Room. Trinity was founded in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth I, and it's a research-intensive university with an illustrious history of innovators, thinkers, and disruptors, from Edmund Burke to the Nobel laureate Sam Beckett. It's firmly international, especially, and I should say increasingly, in relation to Europe, with €100 million of EU research funding. Trinity is an active member of Coimbra and recently joined LIRU, the League of European Research Universities, and we're very engaged in areas such as the LIRU Roadmap to Open Science. As to the library, the Long Room is often called the most beautiful room in Ireland. Delegates will have the opportunity to visit tomorrow evening during the reception, when also Mary Robinson, the former President of Ireland and United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, will address us about one of the most, if not the most important issue facing society. The old library is visited by heads of state and government, global leaders. In the 5 years I've been here, we've hosted Joe Biden twice, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, Tim Cook, Chief Exec of Apple, and many presidents and prime ministers. This 18th century library is both the internationally recognized face of Trinity and, more importantly, it's a working library, home to over 250,000 early printed books, 800 medieval manuscripts, the most famous of which is the incomparable Book of Kells. As a major destination in Dublin, we now welcome 1 million people a year to visit the Book of Kells and the Long Room. Trinity's contemporary libraries are a suite of individualistic buildings, ranging from the shabby chic of the Lecky through to the brutalist Berkeley Library and the elegantly understated Usher Library, and they're all open to you on production of your delegate badges, and do also look at the exhibition on political cartoons. So the library contains 6.5 million volumes, including extensive Irish and UK copyright material, e-resources, increasingly UK electronic legal deposit library, because Trinity is the UK copyright library for the island of Ireland. We're still working on achieving Irish legal deposit. I'm particularly delighted that the library is a flagship project at the heart of the recently launched, very ambitious campaign for Trinity, which is the first such philanthropic university-wide campaign in Ireland. The president and provost of Trinity, Dr. Patrick Prendergast, is in fact in America today for the West Coast launch of Trinity's Capital Campaign, and he sends us his warmest greetings. On behalf of the president and provost, I'm going to show one of the very short films about Trinity from the campaign. It's a minute long, and perhaps you can spot how many times the library appears.
Inspiration has lived here since 1592, and more than 400 years later, it's still going strong. Inspiration has helped burgeoning writers put pen to paper and given world leaders a head start. It has set the stage for budding playwrights and created characters that will never die. For countless actors who started here, inspiration has played a part. Work done in Trinity helped split the atom, battled cancer, and guided man's first giant leap. From here, we've inspired people around the world. But even with this proud history, we are firmly focused on the future. Today, we are making new discoveries and inspiring the next generation of history makers.
I hope that gives you a flavour of where you'll be for the next couple of days. While founded in the Renaissance, Trinity is firmly embracing the future with a new Cancer Institute, an E3 Institute of Engineering, Energy and Emerging Technologies, and a new law school. As to the library, there are two major components in the Capital Campaign. Firstly, the Old Library Redevelopment Project, and secondly, the creation of a virtual Trinity library of our magnificent, unique and distinct materials. So finally, Madam President, I don't think there can ever have been such a challenging and energizing time to work in the world of libraries. In fact, in the age of fake news and information overload, libraries have never been so important. Our brilliant Dean of Research, Professor Linda Doyle, who will be giving the opening keynote, she talks about standing up for research. This conference and its theme is really about standing up for research libraries. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome to Trinity College Dublin, and let's stand up for research libraries and for their importance in society. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Cathal Macaulay, who's the chair of Conal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Madam President, for your kind introduction and welcome. Is mór an ar agam agus an pleasure dom, mar Cahirlach Connell, fáilte cur rómh go léir chuig Líber 2019. It is an honour and a pleasure to welcome you to Líber 2019 as Chair of Connell, the Consortium of National and University Libraries. Connell is delighted to collaborate with our member organisation Trinity College Dublin, the University of Dublin, to host Líber this year. And on a personal note, as a former graduate of Trinity, it's always nice to come back to my alma mater, especially for such a wonderful occasion as this, and I'm delighted that Líber is here. Connell brings together Ireland's main research libraries to develop and improve the library and information services of its members through the exchange of experience and the organisation of innovative cooperative activities. It has an all-Ireland remit with membership drawn both from the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Connell has a strong track record of working with colleagues nationally and internationally to address the challenges facing libraries, and it is fitting, therefore, that we are working with Trinity to bring Líber to Dublin so that this important work can be further advanced. In addition to what I'm confident will be an interesting and inspiring conference, I also hope that during your time here, you will have an opportunity to see the many wonderful attractions of Ireland, from beautiful scenery, unique heritage, and warm and welcoming people. Ireland is a relatively small country, and you can see a great deal of it in a short time, and I recommend you make the most of it. I'm sure some of you have already managed to do some of that. Finally, I want to thank you for coming to Ireland and helping to make Líber 2019 such a vibrant success. I have no doubt that the networking and informal discussions that happen around the conference sessions will be an important part of the Líber experience, and your attendance enriches it. Gur míle maith go léir agus tásúla gom gur bhaineann sibh tainmh as for am bhá clia. Thank you very, very much, and I hope you enjoy your time in Dublin. Thank you very much.
So, dear Helen and Cathal, thank you so much for your introductory words. We strongly believe that the research libraries are able and will play an important role in building the digital world of tomorrow. We are delighted to be able, in the wake of the conference, to discover culture and innovation in Dublin, the city of literature, as you said, Helen, and of disruptors. I'm sure there are disruptors also in this room. For sure, we will enjoy the tours also in the libraries and in the pubs. I had the opportunity to try one. It's really an experience. So for sure, we'll have an enjoyable time in Dublin. Thank you so much. Now, a few words on highlights of the Líber work of this year, 2018-2019. As Líber, we have seen many successes, notably in the area of copyright reform, where Líber, thanks to our Copyright and Legal Matter Working Group, led the way in representing Europe's research libraries. We could sign open letters. We send out voting recommendation to members of the European Parliament, taking in account the position of research libraries. We are proud that providing text and data mining, digital preservation, mass digitization, and distant learning services will become easier for research libraries across the continent as a result of forthcoming changes to copyright legislation. Now work is continuing with the implementation of the Copyright Directive on a national level. A second focus area of the work of the Executive Board and the Líber office was to ensure Líber's viability in the years to come. Líber is a healthy organization, but in recent years our expenses tended to exceed our income, regardless of working with tight budgets, which is quite reasonable, of course, but may not always cover all the services Líber should provide to its member research libraries in a context of rapid and profound change. So a task force investigated this field and came up with a proposal you already had the opportunity to discover in our March and May mailings and discuss in a series of calls. Don't miss the first part of the meeting of participants at the end of this afternoon to learn more about this proposal. As usually, LIBER continues to participate in a range of European projects. This year, we participated in these projects: Foster Plus, which is about open science training, some projects around the European Open Science Cloud. It was EOSC Pilot, which established a governance framework for EOSC, and the SHOC, which is realizing the social science and humanities part of European Open Science Cloud. In the field of authentication and authorization, LIBER participated in the project ARC2 for training and outreach. Further, we led the implementation of the EC OpenAIRE 2020 FP7 post-grant open access pilot. And in the field of altmetrics, the HuMetrics HSS project, which aims to reverse engineer the process of using evaluation metrics. LIBER was present also in a range of events. Here you can see this one was the EU presidency event around EOSC in, I think it was in Brussels, in which the key role of research libraries was highlighted. Our Open Access Working Group contributed to high-level discussions also around Plan S and provided materials for LIBER libraries to react during the consultation phase. They provided 6 ways to improve the Plan S guidelines, a feedback that was entirely taken over by Coalition S. So thanks so much for also to the members of our Open Access Working Group. Work is continuing in this field just now, as you could hear it if you participate in the workshop. In this fast-moving context, LIBER's Open Science Roadmap is very useful and very used. We have 2,500 copies downloaded so far. Go for it to know how to move into the brave new world of open science. Then we have our Emerging Leader program. It is popular as ever. 25 future library leaders graduated from our 2017-2018 program, and 27 new candidates enrolled for the 2019-2020 program. Together with other library organizations, we issued also a number of statements and manifesto in relation with the future of libraries. This year we work with IFLA, EBLIDA, Spark Europe and Public Libraries 2030 to endorse a library manifesto for Europe. We are happy to see that LIBER is still growing. We do now have 451 participants, libraries, consortia, associations, organizations from 39 countries all over Europe, with an incredible 33 new participants in this year, 2018-2019. Now, as formally requested, it's my pleasure to open the meeting of participants. Just don't vote immediately. It's just a formal announcement. As from now on, you can vote, and this until Thursday, 9 o'clock. So this is enough from my side. I give the floor to our Secretary General, John McCall, for the nominations of the board.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Jeanette. So, as Jeanette mentioned, the meeting of participants is formally opened at this opening ceremony. And just, I would like to make a quick note for people who are used to the LIBER pattern in the conference. Our formal meeting of participants happens on the Thursday afternoon, and that's when we will have voting, and there will be a vote tomorrow on our new proposal. But exceptionally this year, we're also having a session of the meeting of participants this afternoon. So at 4:15 this afternoon, please come to a meeting to discuss our proposal. We feel that the proposal is sufficiently significant that it would be good for people to come and have an opportunity to hear the proposal presented to you and ask your questions ahead of the formal meeting tomorrow. So we have 4 vacancies on the executive board. This is due to resignations. Martin Halleck, Wolfram Horstmann and Matthias van Ottegem have all resigned. Wolfram and Matthias as of this meeting, and Martin resigned earlier in the year. And also Andris Vilks from the National Library of Latvia has reached the end of his term of office on the board. So we have 4 vacancies. But we have 11 nominations, which is wonderful to have so many. Dr. Andreas Brandner, University Library of Freie Universität Berlin, Germany. Dr. Paolo Budroni, Vienna University Library and Archive Services, Austria. Maria Casella, Biblioteca Norberto Biblio, Università di Torino, Italy. Ms. Monica Crump, National University of Ireland, Galway, Ireland. Ms. Gyöngy Karaksoni, University and National Library, University of Debrecen, Hungary. Haile Kautanen, Finnish Literature Society, Finland. Dr. Birgit Schmidt, Göttingen State and University Library, Germany. Mrs. Hanna Graver-Møvig, University of Oslo, Norway. Dr. Adam Sofronijevic, University of Belgrade, Serbia. Dr. Hilde van Wijngaarden, Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And Andras Hall, Library and Information Center, Hungarian Academy of Sciences, Hungary. So 11 candidates. So those of you with voting rights, please ensure that you pick up your closed ballot paper. You can vote only 4 times. And as Jeanette said, you must vote by 9 a.m. tomorrow at the Liber desk. And we will announce the results of the vote at the meeting of participants tomorrow. And I'm grateful to tellers. I have successfully appointed 3 tellers to help with the count. Josette Thorn from European University Institute, Italy. Liz Waller, University of Durham, United Kingdom, and Colette McKenna, University College Cork, Ireland, who will be assisting me in the counting. And there could be quite a lot of counting to do. I should also announce that 2 members of our executive board have reached their initial term of office, which is 2 years, and have declared themselves willing to stand again for a second term. That's Dr. Bertel Dorch from University of Southern Denmark, and Ms. Agnes Ponsati Obiols from the Spanish National Research Council. And tomorrow at the meeting of participants, I will be asking the meeting to approve or give its vote on the reappointment of those 2 members of the board. Thank you.
So I shortly take over because we have also to reappoint John McCall, whom you just heard, which our Secretary General, who is eager to continue also, and he also have to be approved by meeting of participants tomorrow. Voila, so we are at the end of procedures things. I can hand over to Julien for his report of the conference program committee.
So, dear colleagues, it's my pleasure to give this report to you as chair of the Conference Program Committee. You have here a few figures about the LIBER 2019 conference. So we have nearly 500 delegates. It's the most numerous conference we ever had for LIBER. So we are very proud of that. We have one crowd connected by live streaming. So you got here the address for live streaming. 33 countries represented, 39 volunteers in the local organization team, the wonderful team in charge of this wonderful venue and this incredible conference. We have a bit less than 200 abstracts received and 52 accepted. So you see that the rate of acceptation is rather low. It means that it was very competitive, and we have hopefully wonderful papers you will be able to listen to in the coming hours and the coming days. And 32 members of the conference are members of a program committee. It means it's not only a few people around the vice president of LIBER, but it's a large community in charge of it. So and a few sketches from the venue itself. I would like also to mention that we will have a live visual report tomorrow by Elko, who will be walking around the venue in the coming hours and the coming days and make some drawings, some sketches of different situations, and maybe start conversation with you to have your feedback about the conference, and we will insert them tomorrow during the meeting of participants as an original feedback of the flavor of the conference itself. Please join the discussion. We have many tools and many means for you to join the discussion. First, we have a Twitter. You have it on the screen. Use it as much as you want. If you have any question, you can go to the LIBER desk near to the registration desk of the conference. All the LIBER office will be there. Atina and other members of the team, very happy to help you in any difficulty you would face. If you have any feedback, please share it via the post-conference survey. You got the address there. We will probably resend it after the conference, but you will be able, just after the closing of the conference, if you are in a hurry, to complete the survey online. And we also will put all the presentations on the Zenodo platform. You got the address there. I would like to make a few extra announcements. Some of them are connected to housekeeping. Very shortly, you are in a large amphitheater, so please do note the fire exits at the exits of the room. Volunteer will be on hand to assist with any emergencies. When you're leaving a room, please use all the exits of a room. We got a lift just outside the entrance to the right of the stage as you look at the stage. And please, you delegates, you can sign up for tours of the old library at any time at the registration desk as part of a welcome reception on Thursday evening. So it comes now to our sponsors. So we are delighted to acknowledge our LIBER Gold sponsors, silver sponsors, as well as our principal and executive sponsors and partners. Please do come to the exhibition area and see them as they stand with some fantastic and new initiative products and services within the market. These events would not be a success without the support and the contribution of our industry partners. So we got, can you display the partners again? Yeah, thank you. So we got gold partners, Ex Libris, a ProQuest company, and EBSCO. We got 3 silver partners, Retro News, Open Edition, and Digital Science. And we got many other partners, principal local partners, Elsevier, Emerald, Frontier, and Innovative. Executive local partners, ACS, CCS, Faculty of 1000, Figshare, Killings, Glenbane, I3E, ProQuest, Springer Nature, Statista, and Ubiquity Press. And you got also supporting local partners, ABES, AcuComms, Affluence, Bloomsbury Digital Resources, Cambridge University Press, EDP Science, Overleaf, Royal Society of Chemistry, Sage Publishing, SpringShare, Taylor & Francis, and Zutshell Digital. And some virtual partners, Casalini Libri from Italy and MDPI. So thanks again to all the sponsors. That's the end of my presentation. And now it's time to start the real scientific part of our conference. It's my pleasure to invite our keynote speaker, Linda Doyle, who has been before director of the Connect SFI Research Center, National Research Center focused on future networks and communication, and who is now a professor of engineering and the arts at Trinity College Dublin, and also Dean of Research at Trinity College Dublin. She will give a speech regarding research for society, the new world of public engagement, citizen science, community, and civic action. So, Linda, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Vice President, and special guests. Can I add my welcome to Helen's to everybody? We're absolutely delighted to have this conference in Trinity, and I'm stunned at the size of it, and I can already feel the passion as I walk around and the kind of engaged feeling of everybody here. So Helen asked me to talk a little bit about research for society. So I thought I'd just say a very small few words about how research matters to us in Trinity. And actually, Helen, you've already done a fantastic job of describing our research. I think I should bring you everywhere with me to do that. But it's an enormous part of our identity. I often say it's part of our DNA. Our three faculties, they're all engaged in research. We work nationally and internationally. And as Helen mentioned already, 100 million of our 300 million income is focused on research. So it's an enormous part of what we do. I suppose it's really important. This actually is my favorite picture of the library. I know the long room is just beautiful, but I find this even more beautiful. And it is one of those buildings that Helen often says divides people. But I use it here because, for me, the library is hugely at the center of the research. Now, it's at the center in very obvious ways. We have amazing collections here, and our students and staff use those as part of their research. But it's at the center much more than that. So the library here are hugely engaged and have been very, very active in forming our research strategy. Helen sits on our research committee, which is at the heart of how we drive research in the university. And in fact, actually, I would say, and I'm going to come back to this at the end, drives many of the ideas that are really, really core to how we tackle research going forward. So they're very, very much at the heart of it. So it is easy for me to say that research matters. Obviously, it matters to me. I'm the Dean of Research here. It's in my title. And of course, all researchers and all academics, I'm sure you're well aware, apart from thinking we're the center of the universe, all think that our research is the most important. So, if you look at gene therapies, you say, of course, it matters in curing people. If you look at people who look at climate change, as we spoke about already, you can say, of course, it matters. It really matters to the world we tackle these problems. If you look at people focused on, culture and identity and immigration, of course, it matters to some of the greatest issues that are facing our society. But actually, most of the time, we're kind of standing in a bubble. And I don't know whether you can see the slide very clearly, but there's a person behind there, and it's hard to see them. And it is the case that we constantly, and I think rightly so, have to explain why research matters and why society should value it. And I suppose in my time in this role, I think one of the main learning points for me is that you will never make the one killer argument that finally ends that discussion, and it's something that we have to do all the time, to decision makers and to taxpayers whose money gets invested in research. And I suppose what we have seen over the last decade is a rise in what we call EP&E, education and public engagement, where there's been a huge focus on how we talk to society in general and use better language and different stories to explain our research. So there's been a huge growth in that. And what you see now is you see that the funding bodies themselves re-emphasize the value of research by actually naming things research for society. So if you look at our own funding bodies nationally, if you take something like Science Foundation Ireland, we have Research for Society and Research for the Economy. If you look at Europe, you see this kind of nomenclature everywhere, where it's trying to re-emphasize time and time again that research matters to society. And if you look at how we're talking about research challenges these days, you'll hear terms like grand societal challenges and missions, where there's a huge emphasis on trying to talk about research in a way that the wider world will care about and understand. And I think that's all very, very good. So what we've seen is a shift, I suppose, in talking about research in the economy to talking about research in society. But I think the most exciting shift that's happened is the shift that's about for and with society. And if you look at a lot of the material emerging now, it's all about engaged research that kind of shifts the dial, where we as researchers go out into the world and find different kind of collaborators. So we're all used to collaborators of other prestigious universities and organizations. And the for and with movement really is about understanding that those collaborators come in increasingly diverse forms and that we engage with those in different ways. So I want to spend a little time talking about how you do research for and with society, and then come back at the end to why that matters for libraries and why you might need to think of things a little bit differently. So there are absolutely many fantastic examples of people doing this and doing this for a long time already. The whole area of citizen science has already been mentioned, and I've just picked one example. There are many fantastic examples around the world. A platform I like is a platform called Zooniverse, and what Zooniverse does, and I'm sure there are many people here who are well versed in the notion of citizen science, Zooniverse puts projects online that the wider world can engage in and do. So what you're saying is citizens at large can get a taste of what it's like to do research. And I think what's really, really interesting in this space, and what you've seen happen certainly over the last few years, that this would have started very firmly in the science side of things. But if you look at the Zooniverse platform here, you will see that the projects go across history and literature, biology, a whole mix of things. And I think that's really, really important. And you'll increasingly see actually libraries who've got very, very interesting collections, who want some kind of analysis done on those collections, putting them up there and allowing citizens to help in that. So that to me is one layer of doing research, I suppose, with, not just for. This, I think, can be taken to a much deeper level. And another example I really love is the organization Sense About Science. So I'm not sure if people know that organization here, but it's an independent charity based in the UK. And that organization basically provokes people into asking for evidence about how decisions are made in public life. So they challenge misrepresentation of science and research and findings, and they get people to say, okay, show me the evidence for that decision. And I think what they're actually doing here is they're training the wider world to have a research eye, which I think is really, really important. I recently went to a fantastic workshop they had about how we encourage our MEPs in Europe to make research-informed decisions. And it's quite a challenging task, but there are resources there, and it is up to us, I suppose, to voice our desire for that to happen. So this is another level of research with. So you're encouraging people to think in different ways and have different levels of, I suppose, demands in society. In fact, actually, one of the women who works in Sense About Science told me that some of the tabloid newspapers got sick of people asking for evidence and peer review evidence from one of the campaigns they were running. So I thought that was a really, really good sign of a change. So the third example I want to give here is one that's based in Trinity. I feel I have to give an example based in Trinity because I'm very proud of the work we do. And it's the work around aging. So we have a long history, no pun intended, of looking at aging in Trinity with some fantastic researchers in the space. And this particular aging project I've picked out is an aging project that focuses on people who are aging who also have intellectual disabilities, in particular Down syndrome. And there's a really stark figure there where for people with Down syndrome who are at risk of dementia, And at the age of 65, there's 88% risk of dementia with Down syndrome, as distinct from 4.3 to 8% in the general population, which is really, really stark. But what I love about this example is this is research for society, for a group that are often neglected, because when we do research, oftentimes we do research for kind of bigger, more mainstream areas. But it's also research with a group that often don't have a voice at all. And the reason why this is such a powerful example is because from the get-go, from the outset of this research project, everything was designed, the research framework, the research values, everything was designed with the people who were involved. There's longitudinal studies where the relationships were built up over many years. And this year, actually, the first memory clinic designed with people from this background opened in Ireland for people with Down syndrome. And as you can see here as well, it's also influenced policy and made changes in how we do things. So this is an amazing example, I think, of the for and with society and the shifts that we're seeing. And I think it's kind of fairly straightforward to say, obviously, you know the problems best if you're experiencing them from a day-to-day basis, and you're able to feed into that in many ways. So there are some great examples, I think, of showing how for and with society is emerging. So I want to spend a little bit of time speaking about the area that I come from. So I'm an engineer, and I've used this kind of picture of messy noise. I come from wireless communications background. And usually I spent all of my time looking for a picture to describe my research, but usually it's nothing. There's wireless. And on top of that, I come from a world where people only notice something has gone wrong when it stops working, like when you can't get on your phone or the internet's down. So in this world, one of the interests I have, and I was very interested in the president mentioned, is the Internet of Things. And I thought I would talk a little bit about the Internet of Things. It's very fourth industrial revolution related. So for people who don't know the definition of the Internet of Things, it's simply about taking everything in the world that you can think of, seats, people, cows, grass, embedding sensors in them, gathering data from those sensors, processing that data, and making decisions. So you can make many different decisions. And the next slide I'm using is it just happens to be from one company that provides sensors, Libelium. And it's a very useful slide because it shows the different kind of things you can kind of make decisions about. So this is a smart city focused example. The idea here is that the sensors are all around the city. It might be simple decisions that need to be made, like I am looking for a parking spot. If I'm directed to a parking spot really quickly and efficiently, I will reduce congestion. So you can use sensors to do that. It might be something about environmental pollution and controlling that and turning things on and off. It could be things about security. It could be things about predictive policing. There's a whole range of things that happen in this space. So when I describe it in terms of applications, people can join in the conversation. And you know, there's a possibility to kind of have a deep conversation about it. But very soon, if you're an engineer or you're in a group of people who are normally involved in the design of this kind of world, these are the kind of words that start to emerge. So maybe I'd say most people probably have heard of 5G by now, especially because a lot of people are complaining about 5G at the moment. But there are a lot of words there that are normal words for the world I come from. And people obviously will have heard of AI and artificial intelligence, but explainable AI and the kind of the algorithmic, I say, processes behind them, they start to become part of the conversation really, really quickly. So if you want a deep conversation about this world, you enter into this. So I suppose the question that we try to ask is we say, okay, how do we do with in this kind of world? So there's fantastic with and for society in areas to do with, say, public patient involvement. And I think you can see where people understand how they're directly affected and develop that vocabulary to talk about it. But it is much harder in this kind of world. And essentially what I see is I see the movement in kind of open scholarship and the movement in public engagement and the movement in citizen science is helping push this along. And the way that we tackle it in my group, so I have a group that OMG is the name of the group, Orthogonal Methods Group, so they work with engineers. It's not OMG. They work with engineers and they're mainly artists and designers, and we take a very creative practice-based approach to this. So it's just one approach, but it's an approach I thought I would talk through for a little bit because I think it really matters in the kind of messages kind of for the libraries of the future. So There are 4 different things I want to talk about in the context of the kind of creative practices and the way that we approach this. So the first thing really is a lot of the work we do is about making things that are invisible visible. And that is the reality in the world that we live in today. We are so used to technological change that it becomes very invisible to us. So the things I'm going to mention here are work that other people have done, as well as work that some people in my group have done, and various things like that. So the first, I love this book. It's by an academic and artist, Ingrid Burrington, and it's called Networks of New York. And she actually has gone around New York City and mapped out all of the hidden networks. So obviously there are some signs of infrastructure, but she's looked at like where you're standing on top of the internet connections, where wireless space stations are. And it's a really interesting read because it gives you a different perspective. And we've done similar things ourselves. This is some people from Trinity out mapping various places around and looking at where cables go and how the infrastructure kind of sits around us. And this is a really, really, I think, important thing to do. It's called actually infrastructure tourism, believe it or not, and people would be interested in anything. And but it's a really, really good way. You see it a lot as well. It's used very tactically and politically when people do infrastructure tourism around data centers, and they draw attention to a variety of the structures that we need to see exist in our landscape. But there's also the bit that's behind the bit that you can't see. And a project that I absolutely adore at the moment is a project that actually looks, it's not anything we did, it's a group of artists elsewhere, but it's a project that looks and asks the question, what can I not see that is behind the Amazon Echo? So I have one of these at home, and this project has really made me think, am I right to have it at home? So it's a project called The Anatomy of an AI System. It's actually in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and Kate Crawford and Vladan Joler are the 2 artists. And as it says, it's an anatomical case study of the Amazon Echo as an artificial intelligence system made of human labor. And that's the really, really interesting thing. So the pictures I have now in no way do it justice, and I would highly recommend that everyone kind of delves into them. But what they've done, they have created, in reality, this image is the size of the screen here, and they have mapped out every single mineral, every single object in it, where it comes from, every single piece of labor that is put into it, the labor we put in, the kind of free crowdsourced labor we put in, the expert labor that goes into the designers, the materials that are used in it. And it is a fascinating example of looking behind the scenes and making things that are invisible visible. And I have just a little few zoom-ins. Again, you can't see, but they go through the mineral table and they pick out, we'll say, the minerals that are in danger, are conflict minerals that are used in it, or where they come from. And they look at things like immaterial labor, crowdsourced labor, and all sorts of other things, and how they all go to this. And there's kind of one key sentence in the essay that they write that accompanies it. And it basically says something along the lines, when you do a simple task, like turn on or off a light, or ask what the time is, you're actually harnessing planetary resources to do that. And it's really, really interesting to think of that invisibility and that system that sits behind it. So a lot of our work and the work we reference is very much about saying, okay, you need to look closer. The invisible digital world around you physical and digital world around you needs to be brought attention to. That's the first thing. The second thing we do is we stress that there is absolutely no such thing as neutral design. This is an absolute principle that I really, really believe in. So to give you 2 examples here, just to give you the sense of it, one goes back in time, and this might be well known, a lot of people here might know this, but Kodak film, you could say, how can film not be neutral? So the Kodak film was designed in the 40s and 50s to be really well attuned to pale skin. So there's fantastic images online where you will see photographs of people with dark or black skin, and they merge into the background and you can't see them because the physical chemicals are attuned to white skin. And this is the thing called the Shirley card. I always find it really funny, but my favorite bit of it is the word normal. So that is what normal is. And obviously I'm abnormal because I'm red in the face a lot. But it's very, very interesting to see. And that is an example of the lack, that I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. I'm saying it's not neutral, okay? My favourite example, and the example I bore people to death with, is the Camden bench. I don't know whether anyone of us has ever seen this, but it is a bench designed in Camden in London. And this bench stops 23 behaviours. So you can't graffiti on it, you can't ram it with a car, you can't skateboard on it. Really importantly, you can't sleep on it. So it's a fantastic example of where they don't have to say, homeless people can't sleep here. It's just not physically possible. So what you have is you have a physical object into which social laws are built. And I think this is really, really, really interesting. So our point in the way we think about the digital world, where the images I showed you of the smart city earlier, of all of the sensors and all of the things that are happening, social laws are being built into that world. And I often use a very, very simple example. You can have smart traffic lights that direct traffic, and for example, you know, in the middle of the night, they change more rapidly, so because there's less cars around. But you could also have smart traffic lights that direct traffic away from salubrious areas towards poorer areas. They put up with the pollution. You don't have to if you live in a better off area. And this might happen on purpose, or it might happen by mistake. And essentially, you need to be able to understand the neutrality of design, or lack of neutrality of design, to get this. And there's a very famous statement from Lawrence Lessig. It says, code is law. And essentially, it's saying social behaviours become law if they're embedded in the code, the hardware and the software of the system. And then you just have to accept it. So that's the second thing we do. We really try to emphasize this whole idea of there's no such thing as neutral design. Then the third thing we do, which is really, really important, is we need to give people vocabulary to talk about things. And that is quite difficult. You know, I mean, I also think for us, actually in academic settings, we think some things are very ordinary ways of discussing things now, but it's really, really important to do this. And again, I'm just giving you some examples of the way to do it that kind of draw on creative practices. So one of those examples, we recently had a staging of this fantastic play here in Trinity. The Trinity Longroom Hub staged it. And this play had two participants, that woman there, and Siri on your phone, on your iPhone. And it was a live interaction between that person and Siri. And it exposed various different things about the algorithm and how Siri works. It's really interesting. Apparently, I learned that Siri is different in different languages. So Siri is more well-behaved in English because it has been trained more in English, and it can still say slightly more crazy things. Apparently in French, it's much more romantic. I wasn't at all surprised to hear that. but it's really, really, really interesting to see the kind of personality that has emerged in it. There's lots of other ways of doing things. I put this in, this is a student of mine did this a number of years ago because the word library was in it. So she used the human library approach. So you know when you can go and take a book out of a library? In this library, you can take a human out of a library, and you can actually kind of spend time with that human and get to know things. And in this particular case, she was looking at designing and development for the city, a sustainable city. So she had all sorts of actors, whether they were architects, city planners, bin men, people who sold things on the streets involved in this library, and you could kind of take one out and spend time with them. And it's another way of kind of developing a vocabulary. And then as a final example, within my own group, we have Jessica Foley came up with this amazing thing called Engineering Fictions. It's kind of a play on those words, but it's a writing workshop. And we use creative writing for people to be able to talk through stories about how technology affects and impacts their lives. And one of the things that this is fantastic for is you will notice very often when you're in a particular discipline, you get locked into the vocabulary of your discipline. And you probably see that in the libraries as well. But this allows you to actually break out of being locked into that and maybe embrace different kind of vocabulary, which not alone allows you to talk about the material, allows you to think differently and rethink things about technology. So there are many, many things you can do, and they're just some examples, but you have to say to yourself, okay, vocabulary, language matters, and we need to think about it. And then finally, the fourth thing we do, and I have, there's little slides on this, is try to affect change. And that is really, really difficult. So the example I gave you earlier of the IDS Tilda, they have really affected change. They've influenced policy. They have done things like created the Dementia Centre for the Memory Clinic for people with Down syndrome. And in this world, I find it a bit harder. So there's two kinds of changes we would like to affect. So first of all, in the world of policy, And we do that, and we're doing it a lot through working with, for example, Dublin City Council, getting them to think how they go about allowing the city to become smarter. There's big Smart Docklands projects here. But essentially as well, we also want to affect change in big companies. And that's actually as we all know, even when it comes to open scholarship, that is the difficult thing when you want to change the behaviors of large companies who are very powerful interests. And ultimately in the world that we live at the moment, when you look at especially the climate action, ultimately while we can all do our bit, the bottom line comes down to a large industry needs to change how they do things. So this, to me, is very close to our heart, and there's a huge amount to do in that yet. So there are the four kind of ways. We try to make things that are invisible visible. We really, really emphasize the thing that there's no such thing as neutral design. I mean, a lot of times, I'm not saying it's right or wrong that something's designed in a particular way. We're saying at least be aware of it. We make sure that people can have the vocabulary to express it, and ultimately we affect change through trying to influence policy, which I have to say the library is hugely helpful with, and that's kind of the way we think of it. So I just want to bring that back then in the last few minutes. Where are we, and where does the library fit in all of this? So when I think about research, the way I would describe this is that research is evolving in so many angles and ways that we've kind of broken out of a straitjacket of what it looks like to do traditional research. Now, in saying that, I am not saying, I absolutely, it's so important to have rigor, repeatability, et cetera, in all of the research we do, whatever the kind of methodologies we use. But the whole idea that something neatly fits into a publication, neatly fits into a book, or neatly fits on a shelf, it's long ago shattered and increasingly being shattered. And on top of that, we've developed a much more sophisticated and nuanced understanding of what impact means. And I think those things are very, very important. And while I didn't explicitly mention open scholarship, they are key parts of this. So for me, when I look at the future of research and open scholarship, on one side you have and I don't mean just in any disrespectful way, just sort out open access. And on the other side, you have completely and utterly radically alter academic life as we know it, and the way research plays out in the world. And we, as a community, are trying to decide where on that spectrum we want to land. And for me, the really interesting thing, and I echo the statements that were made at the start of this, it is the most exciting time for libraries, because libraries have huge amounts of things to say in that space. Our library helps us understand what open scholarship means. Our library helps us capture impact in all of the new and weird and wonderful ways that it exists. But most importantly, the library is a part of the process that is about making this, I suppose a glib word would be have the status it deserves, but taking it seriously, rather than it just being this fluffy other stuff that sits around the side. So I put this picture of the library back in the end. It's at the heart of what we're doing here in driving the open scholarship agenda. We have this amazing year-long unboxing open scholarship events that thanks to Helen, that we're doing, which is allowing us to explore these themes. But this stuff is quite fundamental to everything a researcher does, how a researcher views themselves and the status, and it's fundamental to the kick that some research is needed in getting out there and doing research for and with society and really, really making impact. So my very final slide, I've robbed a slide from, which is a bad thing to do in front of a bunch of librarians who check copyright, from an old campaign, and so Irish people here will get this. And essentially there is a lot done, and there's much, much, much more to do. And when I look at here, and I look at the kind of things you do, I see a lot of that done. And I certainly see it here in Trinity, and we wouldn't be as far as we are without the library. There is much, much more to do, but I think it's really, really exciting, and it was great to have this opportunity to say these few words to you. Thank you.
Thanks again to Linda for his very vivid and quite inspiring talk. And I think that now colleagues from the room would like to ask you some questions about your incredible presentation.
Do I just throw this at somebody if they want to ask a question?
Yeah. So we have a tradition. This is a mic,
Yeah.
and we throw it through the room to someone who wants to talk.
Okay, and not someone who doesn't want to talk.
So, colleagues, any question to Linda?
No worries if not. Oh,
Catch it. Up.
Was scared to ask the question because of the box. Linda, I think...
You're speaking it.
Oh, you speak? Oh,
oh yeah.
now I see the purpose. I thought it was just to
Internet of
hit
Things.
people. Okay. I think something about the hidden bias and hidden labour that's really relevant for libraries is in the special collections and what we choose to keep and collect and what society chooses or decides is valuable and should be donated, collected, kept. And in the end, in 100 years' time, that's history because that's all we'll have. So I think this idea of challenging us on our own hidden biases, the labour, the decisions we make, particularly for libraries, as a really, really important foundational question.
Oh, well, I think I don't have much to answer to that, and I completely agree with you. And I think, in one sense, you don't want to get analysis paralysis where you overthink every bias and everything. But I do think it is, so one of the big things that comes up in the world I'm from is the political nature of measurement. And essentially, every measurement you make is politically contextualized, and that actually goes through, and we see it all the time, especially we'll say in kind of gender scenarios where certain documents are considered more important and they would have excluded certain people from history as a result of that. So I agree with you that it is really, really important to think like that. And it is complicated as well, because I realized when you're asking that question, some of the citizen science we do is actually availing of crowdsourced labor in a kind of, I suppose, in a kind of precarious way that's encouraging that work further. But on the other hand, the libraries wouldn't actually survive without some of it either. So I think we're in a complex space ethically and morally, but I think for me the message is be aware of it. And if you make whatever decision you make, you know you're making it, rather than you're kind of making it by mistake, Oh, there's a question.
Oh, where are we?
Yes, very good.
Thank you very much. My name is Hilde van Wijngaarden from Amsterdam. Thank you very much for this inspiring talk. I told my colleague I want this Dean of Research. The thing is, for most libraries, it's very difficult to get a good connection with your researchers. And recently, I've been told not to walk that much far ahead in front of the troops. Because most researchers aren't as innovative as you are, or as most of your group probably are, or as some of the group are. Should we hold back a little bit as research libraries, or should we keep on running?
Yeah.
But then the gap will be so large. What do you think?
So I think that I would say absolutely not, but there are ways that you can do it, right? So research institutions are typically really conservative. And also as well, people are, I think, very secure in the measurement system that's currently measuring them. And I'm not, we have amazing researchers here using traditional metrics that are brilliant at what they do, and those traditional metrics, aren't lying in any way, in the sense of, I can see that those people are great. But I think essentially what you're dealing with, especially with open scholarship in this, is a huge level of insecurity as you go from one system to the other. And we've had Paul Ayres over talk about UCL's Open Press, and he says often, and Helen quotes him, the culture change is the biggest thing. So I would say absolutely not. Continue to be a disruptor, continue to put things in there, but also understand that it is culture change. And the way I think Helen and myself do it is you just need to spot the few open doors. So you only need 4 or 5 people, you need to start your gang, you need to get them into it. And it can help hugely if there's somebody who's good by traditional metrics in that mix. So if you get one of the perceived senior academics who publishes in Nature or whatever it is and they're involved in that, then you really push that. And we found actually most recently, some of the talks we've had in Unboxing Open Scholarship have actually drawn in people that you say, okay, this person's worldwide respected. The fact they're talking about this is going to shift thinking. So don't stop, pick your battles wisely and get a few people who are on your side, and that's all you need. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
We'll never get the thing up there.
This direction. No, just people will help.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
This is an example of networking.
Yeah, exactly.
And routing.
Oh!
Okay, just a comment and then a question. My name is Stella Butler. I'm from the University of Leeds. Just a compliment on the ageing project because I wanted to learn about MOOCs. I did the ageing MOOC that you do from Trinity, and it was absolutely fantastic. I think it's just a wonderful set of research that you've done there. So just compliments.
I will tell them that, and thank you.
Reinforcement. My question is around what would make you as a researcher, what can libraries do? What would make your life better, or what would enable open scholarship? What could we do that we don't do at the moment?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of the things that are in the offing and lined up to do are exactly the kind of things. So I think certainly the discussion about how do you capture alternative forms of research and in what way you do it is actually led, in most cases that I see, from the library side. And I think so continuing that is good. Embracing the altmetrics approach is good. But I also think what I see is very, very good. And this goes back to there's no such thing as neutral design. I mean, you can use data any way you want. Right? And you can prove anything, to be perfectly honest. And I think exposing that, I mean, we are all locked into a certain way of measuring and doing data, and kind of exposing, I suppose, the fact that, to tell the full picture, you need multiple perspectives, and that one slice of data only gives you one kind of view. So I think continuing, I mean, what I see when I look at the Open Science roadmap and when I look at things that are in there, I see all great things. So continuing to do those. I think what's really, really, what I find frustrating with the Open Scholarship stuff myself, I'm not often able to give good enough examples of all. So for example, if you take the DORA initiative and you say you're not going to use journal impact factors and you're not going to do such and such a thing, there's never enough good. So instead you can do such and such a thing, and here's a good example of how you do such and such a thing. I'm still missing some of that in those stories. So as you develop those techniques to kind of fill out those stories of alternative ways of doing things, I think is really, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Thomas Korsted from University of Southern Denmark. Very inspiring. What I would ask you, the next generation of researchers at all our universities are right inside our houses right now. It's students and it's coming generations in the educational system. Do you at Trinity have any reflections or any initiatives on how to engage your own students, or perhaps students from schools or high schools or whatever?
So I think that's a great question. So I just want to make one observation and give you one example. So it's an observation I've been using before. We have a fantastic competition here called the BT Young Scientist, where we have school kids who compete, who come up with the most amazing solutions to problems in the world. And the kid who won it last year, when I went over to his desk, he had what looked like an academic paper that he'd written on his desk. And I noticed that he had that on archive. He had it on an open source, an open platform. It didn't occur to him that you would actually write something and not share it with people. So we really believe the revolution does start with the people who are coming in at that side and kind of understand that, things should be open and you can deal with things in a different way. So that's the first kind of comment. So the second thing, I think there's lots of different things you can do. One thing I have found is at some events I've been at with undergraduates, they kind of don't know what we're talking about, because basically they start off being very open. We train them into being closed and narrow-minded. So they yet haven't been trained as postgrads into being more closed and narrow-minded. So they're going, what are you on about? So it can be hard sometimes to do things before they've actually hit the challenges. But one thing we're currently doing in Trinity, there are 21 different journals that have been instigated by either undergrads or PhDs, and they've come organically. So what we've decided to do is, first of all, get them all together to celebrate the fact that, you know, research is so much in their DNA that they're creating these things at an early age. I look and think, oh my God, what was I doing in college? Barely keeping up, whereas these people are just leading. And the second thing that we're doing is we're kind of looking at how that can be more formally open access, and encouraging them to develop tools and skill sets that help them do that. And that's kind of part of starting the revolution, I suppose, from an earlier stage. And I mean, in a sense, when we've had the first meetings already, I would have said they kind of weren't fully aware of the kind of vocabulary we even use here, and that was a kind of starting the process. So we'll be doing a launch of that in September of this year, but there's one example of that I'd highly encourage.
Okay, we got time for a very last question.
I think we're okay, Eric. Nobody wants to be hit on the head by the blue thing. So.
No question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ed Fair, University of Southampton. If there is no such thing as neutral design, how should we choose our ethics?
I mean, that is a really hard question. And so I first and foremost for me is that people are aware. So I do networking research. Every network you design includes certain people and excludes others. You may want it that way. You may be on purpose deciding to do it, but actually knowing that you're doing that. And I mean, I think, so the first thing to me is just the awareness thing. Beyond that, I think it's really, really, really complicated. And I do feel that you see, and this is, I think, where libraries can get involved as well hugely. You do see multidisciplinary groups coming together around AI and ethics now much more, and dealing with those thorny issues. And there isn't a short answer in this, you know, and I think even, like, as I said, when I looked at that artwork on the Amazon Echo, and they're at home still asking Amazon what time it is or something completely inane because I don't want to look at I can't find my phone or something. So I do think the first bit of it is the kind of awareness, and I think there's a mixture between a personal ethical choice as well, and the need for us to push more universally about what we want of big business and the companies in the world in which we inhabit. Not a great answer for you, but I think it's a very complicated question, and a very great question, and one that we could spend many sessions, I think, discussing.
Okay, so colleagues, let's show once again our appreciation to Linda for a great speech. Okay, so what's next this afternoon? Parallel session will start at 2:45 until 4:15 in different areas of this building. Then do not forget that we have a MOP session from 4:15 to 5:30 in this room with an overflow to the Robert Emmet Theatre in case of necessity. And tonight, from 7 p.m. until 11 p.m., we have the conference dinner in the round room in the Mansion House. And now it's time for half an hour for a coffee break in the exhibition area. Thanks a lot.
Two, two, hey. Two, hey. Two, hey, hey. Two, hey, hey. Two. Two, hey, hey. You should be getting that. Yeah, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, happy days. Cool, thanks. Let me just come down onto the stage actually, so make sure this isn't gonna go nuts. Two, check. Yeah, 2. Hey, hey, ha. Yeah, 2. Hey, hey. Yeah, 2. Yeah, I can come over here and sorry. 2, check. Yeah, hey, hey. Happy? Yeah. Two, two. 2, yeah. Hey, hey. Okay, leave it turned on and it's up. What's up with there? -5. Oh, yeah. Yeah, do you want to take it? Yeah. Cool, thanks.
Did you want to?
Oh, you can have it, it's fine.
Doesn't work.
Just tape something down.
Thank you. Is that on all the time, or is it?
Is it on, Rory? Is this on now?
It's on, yeah.
Okay, good.
It's turned down a little bit.
Okay, good.
Simon has control of the slides.
Do we know if all the presentations are up?
It's better if you do, because we're all a bit scared of Sophie. So.
Presentations work. Do they bring them up automatically? They do, but I need to know exactly what time they have.
Okay, everyone, let's take our seats for session number 3.